What's up, guys? Ben here, Tactical Nutrition. You know the deal. Just a quick update. I just hired someone to remake my website. The one that I made looked like junk. And so I will still have my custom training nutrition programs there through the Trainerize app. If you're really looking to really learn, my goal as a trainer, there's different types of trainers out there. I'm not like this little therapy trainer, and there's a lot of them out there. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some, they tend to train like older people, older women. People aren't going to be doing like really hard lifting. And they're kind of there to also just be like shoulder to cry on. I'm more of someone that wants to put myself out of a job by teaching you how to weightlift and how to make programs properly so that you can go out and do it on your own. Because I'll say it and I say it again, this is my last little plug. At the end of the day, I see so many people at the gym all over the place that kind of make the same mistakes. And I'll talk about them in other videos. I've talked about them in past videos. But there is a rhyme and reason, an order of operations, and kind of a proper way. And it's going to lead into this video because this video is about, anyway, I'll leave it at that. If you want to learn and get the custom workouts and get the custom nutrition plan and how to do your macros and learn how to eat properly to where it becomes autonomous and you don't have to eat really boring stuff all the time too. You can make it part of your lifestyle. That's the goal. Anyway, so this video is about why your main goal should be to add muscle. And this is actually targeted more at women than men, because we all know that. We've all heard this from women before, trainers. I don't want to get too bulky. And honestly, I've trained many women in the past, and I told them look, our goal is to put as much muscle on you as possible. And they'd be a little surprised. I'm like, look, if you're a female especially, or a dude, if you ever look in the mirror and you realize you have too much muscle, you can go ahead and tone it back a bit, right? Does this ever happen? Absolutely not. Because it's not very easy, unless you kind of know what you're doing, to add significant muscle. You might be able to do it at first, but as time goes on, you've trained more and your body is adapted. You get the law of diminishing returns. And that's why it's you can only peak out at a certain point, genetically without PEDs and steroids and stuff like that. But I think you can actually do a lot without actually, having to get into that. So, but there's other reasons too why you should add muscle. So this isn't a video about how to add muscle, although I would recommend that you look back on some of my videos or look online about compound movements, deadlifts, squats, bench press, overhead press, things of that nature, barbell rows, stuff where you can use heavy weight and you basically enact a lot of muscle groups at one time. Even like a barbell row, you're still using your legs to hold the weight up. You're using your hamstrings, your glutes, your core, obviously your back, your biceps, your forearms. This is what I'm talking about with compound movements. They're bringing lots of muscle groups into the situation. What it does is it causes a lot more of a growth response, more testosterone release, generally more growth hormone. And as long as you know what you're doing and you don't overdo it, you should be able to continually make progress week after week. And that's kind of the overall goal. Now, with women, this is just a little anecdote. I just noticed after a couple of years of getting out of college and being a trainer, and at first you just don't really know quite what you're doing. Nobody really does. You don't nail it. There's a lot of trial and error out on the floor as you go through clients and you learn about different body types and see what their diet's doing, and you just learn from experience, right? There's only so much you can learn in a classroom or online watching videos. It's so much more when you're logging their progress and you're saying, okay, what's the factor that I see connecting all these different people with their results? And one thing with women is, women in particular, like, nobody wants to have this, like, they think they got to cut out all of their snacks and their favorite desserts and, their guilty pleasures. And the truth is, you really don't have to, because the more muscle you add, the higher metabolism will be. And what I noticed with my female clients that were really consistent and actually listened to what I was saying is, generally what would happen is they would become, their weight would kind of like, sometimes it would even go up if they were like not super heavy to begin with, right? They were like an average size person or whatever. But like week to week, because we're taking body fat as well as weight, which is super important too, not just to take your weight, but your body fat. Because if your weight goes up by 3 pounds and your body fat drops by 1%, that's a success over long term. It's never going to be like this, or should I say like this on the way down, where you just lose weight and lose body fat and lose weight. You are going to be adding muscle. And so if you add muscle and you don't lose any body fat, you're still going to lose, your body fat percentage is still dropping if you think about it, because you've added more lean tissue and the fat has remained the same. So your body fat drops. And what happens is, I've heard different numbers, but for the most part, 1 pound of muscle added takes about an extra 4 grams of carbohydrates a day to maintain. So 1 pound doesn't sound like much. It's like 4 grams. That's nothing, right? But think of if you add 10 pounds of muscle. Your body is legitimately going to be able to metabolize 40 grams of carbohydrates a day to maintain that muscle. And then when you start to get 15, 20 pounds, and I mean, that's a lot for a female, but it's not unheard of. You can see how this is how it increases your metabolism. And it's also going to be burning more fat, because your muscle takes, it's constantly running through energy, which is why you have to keep your protein intake higher. And as you add muscle, you add more protein to maintain, etc. The short end of what I'm saying, I'm kind of meandering around the fact, is that oftentimes what would happen is, as the woman would gain muscle, and we're tracking the body fat, she would gain muscle, but she would be getting smaller because, muscle weighs the same as fat, right? But it's denser. So you actually, you can get smaller and your weight kind of stays the same. So you look better, but you have more muscle instead of fat. And so we end up jacking up the calories as we're going along, because the maintenance calories are going up. And a lot of times when I know they're hitting the stride, when they're like, oh man, I'm just hungry all the time. And, they kind of have to stop themselves from cheating, but it's like, okay, let's increase your quality calories. And guess what? Every once in a while, you can get away with having some cake or pizza or whatever. You can't do it all the time, obviously, but especially when I train a girl for a fitness competition, it's a beautiful thing when you hit that cheat meal perfectly, because what would happen is, I trained a girl for a fitness competition. And so in this case, I was tracking, like, normally with a client, you would just kind of track maybe their caliper, body fat, their weight, and you're logging the workouts and the nutrition, but it's kind of a basic thing. With her, it was like we had weekly photos, because we had to see where she was losing the weight and to see that everything was proportional for when she got on stage for the competition, because this is not a normal training procedure. And what would happen is, like, week after week, she's getting narrower and narrower, and the waist narrow, and the hips are like, the muscles increasing, just getting more shapely. She's going to take these pictures basically in a bikini. It has to be something where you can see the fine details. You can't be wearing jeans. And so, and then after a while, what would happen is I'm paying attention to her appetite, and also like for like 2 weeks in a row, the physical progress stagnated. She wasn't really, her body fat wasn't really changing. She wasn't really losing weight. And then she's like talking about how she's been really committed, and she's been, but she's still kind of hungry. And I mean, unfortunately, when you are in that really methodical, low body fat goal, hunger oftentimes is going to be a necessity. I mean, to lose fat. But I said, okay, this is time for the cheat meal. And so I was like, go out, eat whatever you want. You get one meal, right? And I said, but just avoid a lot of alcohol, for other reasons. And so she goes out to IHOP or wherever, tons of pancakes. I said, all the carbs you want, until you're full. Don't like get stupid with it now. Just enjoy yourself. And so she goes out and has a bunch of pancakes, syrup, and I think she had some whipped cream on there, and then comes in 2 days later to train, and body fat is dropped and her weight starts dropping again. That's how the cheat meal is supposed to work. It will actually work in your favor, and you can see how that can be very enjoyable. You've been diligent with your diet. Your body glycogen levels are starting to get low, too low. This is why you need kind of a coach or someone if you really want to get jacked and lean. You need someone, unless you're really like, I don't know, unless you're really lucky or you're really in tune with yourself or like you're really obsessed about it. You need someone there to like figure out what's going on. And so what happens is like your glycogen levels get really low, and then you hit the cheat meal and you actually lose weight. And then all their friends are super jealous. Like, how can you lose weight when you eat pancakes? And it's like, well, that's not how it works. We just carved you back up, right? Now your body is full of fuel and ready to burn again. It's a dance. But when you add muscle, each day, again, your body can burn about 4 grams of carbohydrates, and it will burn more fat. Your metabolism's higher, so while you're sleeping, that's when you're going to actually be burning fat. Now you have to keep your macros in check, but the workouts need to be muscle building workouts too. You can't have the muscle building nutrition plan and then go do Pilates classes and expect it to work out. You need to do things that are going to add muscle. Again, the compound movements. So when I was training these girls, we would generally have a large strength workout or exercise to start, a compound lift, squats, deadlifts, usually one of those two. Maybe it would be something like weighted lunges, but generally it would be one of those big muscle groups. And then we would work it down into circuits. And I like circuit training because it does get your cardio up. It does induce more fat loss, and your metabolism does increase. But they're not circuits just like jumping jacks and bicep curl, weird stuff. They'd be more like, okay, now you're going to do some pull-ups, and then maybe some box jumps, and then maybe jump rope in between, like stuff like that. That's still challenging and still actually going to add muscle. And then break it down into the small stuff at the end, polish it up. We're doing shoulder raises or whatever whatever it might be. It would obviously vary depending on who and what day it was and all that stuff. But to end the video, almost everyone, their goal should be to add muscle. To do it properly, safely, learn how to do the movements. Don't just get out there and start doing squats. Have someone watch your form. Take videos of it. Critique it. Make sure that's how you avoid injury. Increase the weight. Also, adding more muscle is correlated to longer lifespan. Your bones will get stronger, so osteoporosis risk will go down, especially important for older individuals. Also, if you're pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic, weight training is critical because, again, adding all that muscle, and then you will steadily lose body fat, but your body's going to burn through carbs and be able to handle glucose better. So while you're balancing out that, balancing out that nutrition plan, the muscle is actually going to help you to keep balanced blood glucose levels, which will eventually, lead to lower, whatever GLP numbers. And medical disclaimer: I'm not saying, I'm not prescribing or all that stuff, but it helps everyone. So anyway, guys, that's the video. Go out there, add muscle, get the nutrition plan, find workouts that you not necessarily you should enjoy the challenge, but think about your health. Take your health seriously, and adding muscle is a huge part of the whole situation. So anyway, guys, I will talk to you in the next video.